The internet's a strange place. On one hand, we have all of the world's knowledge available almost instantaneously at our fingertips. And on the other hand, we have Skibbity Toilet. With the blessing of unbridled access to all kinds of stuff that we only dreamed about mere decades ago, came hordes of mostly anonymous personas who frequently engage in arguments with deeply personal attacks about things like theme park announcements. Disney recently had a big ol' conference to talk about potential new attractions and definite changes to their parks, and the online discourse about it has been, well, not great. And while yes, online vitriol isn't anything new, the level of aggression in the conversation is pretty wild to me. So why are people getting so heated about an amusement park? Why did someone on Twitter call me a paid shill edgelord? What even is an edgelord? An edgelord is someone typically on the internet who tries to impress or shock by posting exaggerated opinions such as nihilism or extremist views? Is that a normal thing to call someone for saying that the Coco boat ride isn't gonna open on time? Is it just because we, as humans, have an innate desire to argue with strangers about trivial fodder that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things? I guess it's easy to just write this all off as nerds being nerds because, to a certain extent, that's exactly what it is. But I think the real story behind this elevated level of passion and meanness in these conversations is a lot more complicated than that. Lucky for you, I've got some time, so I'm gonna tell you all about it. Hit my music! Reason number 1, brands as identity. There's 3 things you don't talk about in life: religion, politics, and Disney, apparently. Look, I know what it's like to be super passionate about something. When I was a kid, there was a battle between 2 pro wrestling companies, the then WWF and WCW, and I was the kind of kid who was fiercely loyal to everything I liked. I remember when the first Jurassic Park movie came out, the studio created a hotline called 1-800-DINO-COP to report any bootleg Jurassic Park merchandise. And I called it because the 25-cent machine in my local grocer had some cheap toys in it called Jurassic Eggs, and I was like, aw, heck no, they're going down. That's right, at 11 years old, I was narking out some random vending machine toy to Universal Pictures because I friggin' love that movie so much. But yeah, I'd get into shouting matches with people in high school about how Goldberg was actually just a ripoff of Stone Cold Steve Austin, getting mad about it, for real. And I guess you could excuse it because I was 16 years old, but that sort of behavior can definitely linger on into your 20s and probably after that. We like to get weirdly gatekeepery about all kinds of dumb stuff, like, is a hot dog a sandwich? Sometimes it's fun to take a tongue-in-cheek, hardline stance on something so stupid, but the same kind of stuff happens in these theme park conversations where people are getting legitimately infuriated. And what makes it worse is that it's totally normal these days to let what used to be a mostly unspoken allegiance to be brought up now all the time and kind of be embraced as one's personality. When I was growing up, the only pop culture, specifically branded group I could think of is the Trekkies, and that was usually used as a slur. Now you've got endless fandoms, Swifties, Disney adults, and like most things, the common denominator of what amplifies them to an unreasonable degree is the internet. Not only did it give everything on the planet a forum for like-minded people to easily discuss in a little safe space echo chamber, because in and of itself that isn't such a bad thing, but social media made it possible to interact with brands like they were people. Who doesn't love getting a retweet from Taco Bell or an Insta-like from Target? It's validating. This thing I love loves me too, and I have proof. The overwhelming presence of all this stuff in our day-to-day life has made embracing a brand as your personality not just easy, but like, kinda comforting. And when someone's attacking your personality, the very fabric of who you are, even if it's something as silly as loyalty to a billion-dollar conglomerate because the rides are fun, you take it personally like you would religion or politics, and you respond in kind. This burning desire we have to interact with these brands leads us to our reason number 2 why the discourse is so aggressive. Influencer culture. Okay, I know this might seem a little tone deaf because I'm saying this as someone who's posting a video on YouTube, but I assure you, I'm not influencing anyone, and I'm only in it for the money. Wait, is there money in this? I sure hope so, because otherwise this is an embarrassing hobby. Can someone who's got a lot of subscribers tell me what they're pulling down? Back to the point. Growing up, if you were a fan of theme parks, it was a dream to work for Disney. The problem with working for Disney, though, was in most cases you had to both live in Florida and be cool with not making a living wage for a long time. But what the internet did was give anyone with a camera and a charming personality a chance to not only be acknowledged by the company, but to kind of work for them without actually working for them. For a lot of people, I'd imagine most, getting a media pass to a big theme park event is pretty frickin' sweet. Just by being a fan and sharing your passion, you get scooped into this world and you can do it on your own terms. There's no worries about your application being denied or having to sweat out an 8+ hour shift in the heat. You can make videos, get a little low-key fame, earn a living, and work for the company you love. That's the American dream, baby! Thing is, when you really want to be in a company's good graces because either you love them, you don't want to lose the hookup, or your livelihood depends on it, it's certainly possible that your posted opinions of said company may not be totally on the level. In this case, reality matters less than the appearance of impropriety. But people get mad about that, because when you have a genuine criticism about something you care about, and you see other folks who may not genuinely be, but appear to be disingenuous in their praise so as not to upset the company, that lack of authenticity can be frustrating. And while I think the idea of fake fans is super toxic and part of the gatekeeping I was talking about earlier, I'd mostly agree that when you have a big following, you really do hold some kind of responsibility to use your influence for good. Now let me just be crystal clear about this. I'm in no way implying that anyone with a positive take on a company is being paid to say it, or that they're only taking that point of view to further their own interests. But when you have good old Bob Iger, who has overseen some of the biggest missteps and cost-cutting in Disney's history, not just in the parks, but as a CEO who leads people, who once said striking writers were disturbing to him for their attempt to get a fair deal, when you have this guy get a standing ovation from 10,000 people, I can certainly see how that might rub some folks the wrong way. And speaking of Bob, that brings us to reason number 3, the war on creativity. Alright, this is the part you've all been waiting for. A lot of an adult's love of a theme park is heavily rooted in nostalgia. Our worldview is framed by our experiences, and when those experiences are amazing, we want everyone to see things the exact same way we did. Virtually any time a theme park changes anything, the torches and pitchforks come out. It's the old "you killed my childhood" bit. Shoot, there were people who staged in-park protests of the closure of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride in Orlando. Come on, everyone loves Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. But one of the latest announcements is bigger than just old people yelling at clouds, because it's about more than just nostalgia. It's about protecting the creative integrity of the living art that is a theme park. Walt Disney World announced that it's going to be filling in their iconic Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island, the little playground thing in the middle of it, and replacing it with a couple of attractions based on the Cars movies. If you don't really know what any of that is or means, it probably doesn't sound like that big of a deal. Are more kids itching to race with Lightning McQueen or climb on stuff based on a book that's almost 150 years old? I guess you can make that argument either way, but playgrounds are everywhere, and Lightning McQueen only hangs out at Disney parks. I'm going with Cars on that one. But the Rivers of America, the boat that's in it, and the lands that surround it didn't end up there by accident. They were all meticulously placed as part of a larger creative vision. I talked about this a little bit in my Adventureland video, not the Disney Adventureland, the one on Long Island. But the difference between a theme park and an amusement park is, well, theming. For decades, no one did it better than Disney. They had the best artists and engineers in the world, carefully creating immaculate experiences where you could literally leave reality behind and step into a completely new world. Whether your brain realized it or not, it wasn't just about the rides. Their parks gave us so much more than that. A chance to walk through art that was masterfully and carefully created, with an insane eye for detail and precision to make even the wildest concepts come to life. Walt Disney was the dreamer, and his brother Roy was the money guy. Roy was rooted in reality, but Walt ultimately called the shots and was able to get the cash he needed to make all of his crazy ideas possible. Now, I know you can't just blindly throw wads of cash at something, but as the saying goes, you have to spend money to make money. Walt and Roy understood that these big creative endeavors would cost a ton, but that the investment would ultimately be worth it. But those were simpler times, and the battle between capitalism and creative integrity waged on fiercely. And in the last decade or so, whether it be theme parks, or movies, or TV programs, or art initiatives, creativity is getting absolutely walloped. So now you have a group of older individuals who grew up in a golden era of creative expression in this medium, and a group of younger individuals who not only missed out on that, but have been exposed to subpar creative in almost every conceivable way. In this particular example, it's super easy for the younger generation to accuse older folks of just being nostalgic losers who can't let something go because, again, in a lot of cases, that's entirely true. But this isn't about that, and it's hard for the younger generation to even wrap their heads around it because you don't know what you don't know, you know? Take this online conversation between two Ashleys. Ashley number 1 saw on Threads, whether you like it or not, all theme parks will change and evolve for the next generation. Rides, attractions, and themes cannot stay in a nostalgic state just because you're getting old. Ashley 2 countered with a very reasonable, it's not about nostalgia, it's about the theme of the land, the kinetic energy of the area, an area where you can relax and escape the stress of getting your next lightning lane. This transforms the park into one slab of concrete filled to the brim. This only makes the park more fast-paced. To which Ashley 1 responded, I don't even understand what this means, but we are all entitled to our opinions. Right. The continued assault on creativity over so many years, the tightening of purse strings, the cutting corners, the belief that creative people don't need to earn a living wage, we're seeing the results of it now. A whole generation only knows things as being just okay. That's their bar. And it becomes incredibly hard to make the point that things were once inarguably better because they have their own nostalgia and love for the relatively thrown together stuff that they like. Execs like Bob Iger and the dozens of others like him have maintained that spending money on creativity isn't worth it because the majority of people can't tell the difference. And now they've finally got their wish. And this is what I think is at the crux of these heated arguments. It's not just about people seeing something they grew up with go away. It's about what it represents. Just okay is good enough. That when people talk about the care, the creativity, and the artistry that went into the building of these places, it's met with replies of, okay, boomer. It's an old guard versus a new guard, but it's for all the wrong reasons. They've positioned us against each other, all in the name of appeasing the shareholders and completely missing the point. I don't have any undying love for the rivers of America. I'm not even sure that I've ever been on that boat. But I do know that it's an integral set piece, an important part of what makes a Disney park a Disney park. I may not remember the boat ride, but I certainly remember those views. The fact it's being drained and poured over, no matter what the reason is behind it, signals yet another damning move away from creativity and artistry, and one towards making decisions based exclusively on logistics and profit margins. And that's something people, myself included, take pretty personally. In conclusion, all the heated discourse will cool off eventually. It always does. But it's hard not to look at this overall moment as a milestone in art history. We'll still have people who truly find themselves in a brand, as apocalyptic as that sounds, and we'll still have influencers doing their thing. But when it comes to the war on creativity, we're at a crossroads. A Disney competitor is building a gorgeous, brand new theme park down the road in Orlando. One that is inventive and creative and thoughtfully put together, seemingly sparing no expense. From immaculate structures to unique attractions to flying dragons soaring overhead, it's shaping up to be an unbelievably impressive, world-class achievement. That company took a big gamble, letting creativity lead the way at what I'm sure is an astronomical cost. But it needs to be a success. Not just profitable, but a juggernaut. If Universal's epic universe fails, it almost assuredly represents the domestic end of these parks as we know it. It'll prove that Bob Iger and co. are right, that it's not worth the money, that world-class artistry and engineering don't matter, and that people can't tell the difference. Time will tell how it all shakes out. Until then, I guess we can all try to be a little nicer online. After all, it's just theme parks, right? Wait, they're gonna get rid of Muppet Vision 3D too? Oh, these